the battle over Obamacare.
17 is going to be a disaster for Obamacare if we don't do something.
President Donald Trump says the nation's healthcare system is in danger of imploding. Fearing for their lives, Christians flee a volatile part of Egypt as ISIS steps up its attacks. Beyond Brexit.
That he is actually trying to put in place the program on which he was elected. How refreshing.
A key figure behind Britain's exit from the European Union tells me what the U.S. can learn from the United Kingdom's vote. And greater unity. Pope Francis prays side by side with Anglicans in Rome. We'll have more on the historic occasion from the Vatican on EWTN News Nightly for Monday, February 27th, 2017. Good evening from Washington, D.C., and thank you to those of you joining us from around the world for news from a Catholic perspective. I'm Lauren Ashburn. President Donald Trump says Congress must make fundamental changes to the sweeping health care law passed by his predecessor. He said it during a meeting with governors from across the nation. Correspondent Wyatt Goolsbee joins us with more. Wyatt.
Lauren, President Trump says his administration, working with Republican leadership in Congress, has come up with a replacement for Obamacare. He calls it a solution, but up to now, he's yet to provide any specifics.
We're going to change it and straighten it out.
President Trump tells health insurance executives he will unveil at least part of his plan to replace Obamacare in his primetime speech to Congress Tuesday night.
I think you're going to like what you hear.
And the president's first major meeting with governors comes as Congress prepares to move forward on a repeal.
We have come up with a solution that's really, I think, very good. Now, I have to tell you, it's an unbelievably complex subject. Nobody knew that health care could be so complicated.
Replacing Obamacare is part of a larger plan to overhaul the federal budget.
And it will include a historic increase in defense spending to rebuild the depleted military of the United States of America at a time we most need it.
The president says he will provide details on the health care repeal tomorrow.
I hope that we see a tremendous amount of support for the president and his policies and his vision tomorrow night. He recognizes the problems that our nation faces, but he also charts a vision forward.
President Trump and Vice President Mike Pence are giving House Speaker Paul Ryan and Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell a preview this afternoon.
The president also promising to have a, quote, big statement on infrastructure, rebuilding nation's roads and bridges specifically in his address to Congress tomorrow night. Lauren?
Wyatt, can you tell us how much of an increase President Trump is planning for the defense budget?
Lauren, Trump's budget includes a $54 billion increase in defense spending. That's the idea here, is to counter that or to offset that with a $54 billion decrease in spending in other programs, including foreign aid. We expect to hear more details, including what programs that would be tomorrow night as well. Lauren?
Wyatt Goolsbee reporting from the White House. Thank you, Wyatt. The White House promises President Trump's speech will be about the renewal of the American spirit. It's not a State of the Union, but is President Trump's first address to a joint session of Congress. Capitol Hill correspondent Jason Calvi joins us with more. Jason?
Lauren, Democrats will offer the standard rebuttal after the president speaks. But today, a full 24 hours before the president comes here to the Capitol, the top Democrats are offering what they're calling a pre-buttal. The chance to speak here to the Capitol and also to millions around the country offers the president the chance to speak directly to the American people, not filtered by the media he frequently slams as fake news. Republicans are looking for details on the president's plans for tax reform, trade policy, and repealing Obamacare. But today, the Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer says he doesn't think Republicans have enough support to repeal Obamacare and defund Planned Parenthood. Senator Schumer says the speech tomorrow should be more of the same.
I fully expect the president to resort to the same populist message he used in his campaign and his inauguration, full of grandiose promises to the working people of America, to gloss over the reality of his administration.
So the president will need to convince skeptics and opponents of the need to repeal Obamacare and to support his agenda. It's his first visit to the Capitol since his inauguration. Republicans have been celebrating the nomination of Neil Gorsuch to the Supreme Court, so we're expecting that might be brought up during the speech tomorrow as well. And Senator Mitch McConnell says that he hopes the speech will be tweet-free, optimistic, and really uplifting for the American people, showing us where we need to go as a country. Lauren?
Tweet-free might be a high bar that I don't know if we're going to see. Jason, do you expect any hecklers?
Well, a big question here really is, how are the Democrats going to show their opposition to President Donald Trump? They've invited many immigrants and foreigners to sit in the gallery here at the Capitol to listen in as President Trump delivers his remarks. Think back also to 2009 when a Republican, Representative Joe Wilson of South Carolina, shouted to President Obama at the time, "You lie." But hecklers may, in of itself, actually motivate Donald Trump to get a little bit more zingy with his presentation tomorrow. So if that happens, that could be a good thing for the speech tomorrow.
Zingy being a technical term. I'll be one of several anchors invited to lunch with the president tomorrow to get a preview of his speech, and we'll have more on that tomorrow evening. The new head of the Democratic National Party pledges to unite a fractured party and rebuild at all levels, from school board to Senate. Tom Paris told CNN that Democrats have to focus on messaging.
You have to make sure that we're out there everywhere talking about how we're the party of good job creation. We're the party of middle-class security. We're the party of inclusion.
Perez, who served as Secretary of Labor in the Obama administration, was elected as the chairman on Saturday with the support of his former boss. He's the first Latino to be the DNC chair and will lead the party that lost about 1,000 elected posts in the last decade. The Republican chairman of the House Intelligence Committee says he has not seen evidence President Trump's campaign had contact with Russian intelligence and warns against what he calls a witch hunt.
We do need to know if there are any Americans that are talking to the Russians and anybody connected to the Russian government or Russian agents. But at this time, I want to be very careful that we can't just go on a witch hunt against Americans because they appear in a news story somewhere.
Representative Nunes says that he will continue to ask for evidence. The Trump administration has pushed back against reports that aides were in contact with Russian intelligence officials during the 2016 presidential campaign. President Trump's pick to be the next Secretary of the Navy withdraws his name from consideration. Philip Bilden cited concerns over separating himself from his business interests. It's similar to the reason given by Vincent Viola, who withdrew after being tapped by Trump to lead the Army. Senators have not yet set a date for Air Force Secretary nominee Heather Wilson's confirmation hearing. Other stories our EWTN News Nightly team is covering around the world. Pope Francis becomes the first leader of the Catholic Church to visit an Anglican parish in Rome. In his remarks Sunday, the Holy Father pushed for greater unity after centuries of mistrust, suspicion, and hostility between the two churches.
Che nel passato si guardavano con sospetto e ostilità.
The Pope saying now we recognize each other as we really are, brothers and sisters in Christ. Vatican correspondent Mary Shovlin joins us from Rome. Mary, this is another first, not only for the Pope, but also for any Pope. How was he received by the Anglican community?
Lauren, the Holy Father received the invitation on behalf of the Anglican community of All Saints Parish here in Rome as they celebrate their 200th anniversary. Their bishop here in Europe, Robert Innes, was on hand to welcome the Holy Father, and the two prayed side by side, which was a very eloquent sign of their search for unity. The Holy Father also blessed an icon which had been created for the occasion. It's a replica of one which is housed here in Rome inside St. John Lateran, something very important in the history of the Catholic Church. He blessed that icon. And then they're also among the crowd, which was also impressive to see, were Roman Catholic cardinals and bishops, but also representatives from the Orthodox and the Anglican authorities as well. And sometimes, Lauren, it's these gestures, just the images themselves, that speak louder than words.
He answered a few questions from the congregation, and it led to a surprise announcement of a possible trip. What was that?
Well, Pope Francis said he was studying the possibility of a trip to southern Sudan, the Eastern African country, which we know has been plagued by war and famine for decades. And we knew this was something on his horizon, something he was desiring to do. But he brought it up during this Q&A, as you mentioned, and he said not only is he studying the possibility of going there to bring a message of hope, but he said the request came from the bishops in the region, and not just Catholic bishops, the Presbyterian and the Anglican ones as well. And they said, why don't you bring the Archbishop of Canterbury, Justin Welby, with you? So the Holy Father not only thinking about going there, but going there together with the leader of the Anglican Communion. So something that would also be another first.
I've watched many movies from the times when the Anglicans split from the Catholic Church. That was, I guess, 1534. After King Henry VIII was denied an annulment. Now, did Pope Francis talk about this at all, or did he indicate how exactly to heal this division?
I think we all, think back to, well, this was all because of a divorce. And I think the Catholic Church and the Anglican side have sought to deepen our understanding. And it wasn't only that. There are a lot of different factors at play there. And so as we work towards unity, Pope Francis says this is something we have to do as we walk together. He was asked whether he would take the same line as Pope Benedict, who said, yes, it's great to work together, but it's also, and maybe even more important, to work on our theological differences. Pope Francis did not contradict his predecessor, but he said, let's talk about those differences, but as we journey together. So let's work towards unity. And as we work all of this stuff out, we're helping the poor together. We're having Bible studies with one another. And hopefully, not only will we heal the wounds of the past, we'll create maybe a greater unity in the future.
Mary Shovelin, EWTN News Nightly Vatican correspondent. Thank you, Mary, for joining us.
Thank you, Lauren.
From Rome to Britain, President Trump is meeting with the British politician who helped convince England to withdraw from the European Union. Nigel Farage tweeted a picture of his dinner with the president Saturday night, and earlier in the week, Farage joined me for a one-on-one interview at CPAC, Conference of Conservatives. Tell us what we can learn from Brexit in the U.S.
Well, I think what Brexit was about was a feeling of helplessness, that what you voted for didn't lead to any fundamental change. In our case, we'd completely given away our sovereignty to the institutions of the European Union. We'd lost control of our borders. Now, the circumstances may be slightly different in America, but there was a feeling in much of America that somehow Washington had taken over people's lives, that the big corporates had too much say, too much power, too much influence, and that actually immigration was becoming a major issue in this country, particularly illegal immigration, which just has not been dealt with properly by governments for years. So the crossovers are really quite big, a massive disconnect between the ruling classes and ordinary people.
On the flip side, what can the British and Europeans learn from President Trump's win?
Well, I think the Trump win shows you can beat the pollsters. You can
and
beat,
the media.
You can beat all the media. And Brexit was similar. But the surprises can happen. But I also think the object lesson from Trump in these first 34, 35 days in office is that he is actually trying to put in place the program on which he was elected. How refreshing for the whole concept of democracy. I love it.
Says what they're going to do.
Absolutely. I think it's great.
That's very funny. Why are you here? Tell me why you came to CPAC, why you came to the United States.
I've been coming to the USA. I work for American companies going back to the 80s and 90s, so I've always a very close link with this country. I started coming here 5 or 6 years ago, meeting American politicians, explaining that we could not be your best ally in the world if we're trapped inside a European Union that was beginning to make foreign policy for us. So I've been coming for years. I'm delighted that CPAC invited me. There are some in this hall who think that Trump wouldn't have won without Brexit, that it was Brexit that kind of gave hope and inspiration to the activists in the Republican Party and the Trump movement.
Do you think that?
I think it helped, yeah. And I think what we saw in 2016 were the beginnings of a big global revolution. It's not finished, it's not over. Brexit, Trump, it's not a blip. There's a big change coming in the Western world. So I'm here partly to celebrate, because why not?
And you're not leading a country anymore.
Yeah,
so.
But I'm also here because I now think it's very important for the UK and the US to get our relationship back to where it should be. You know, frankly, Obama looked at Germany as being the main European country for America to have.
Angela Merkel, correct?
Absolutely, and I think now it's going to be the UK, and I'm very excited about that.
Before we leave, do you miss your job?
Do you know what? We all have different phases in our lives, and I'm enjoying this one.
Excellent. Nigel Farage, thank you so much for joining us. Coming up, Christians in Egypt fleeing for their lives. We'll discuss the plight of religious minorities throughout the region. And Senator Ted Cruz of Texas opens up to me about his faith. Christians in Egypt flee the northern Sinai Peninsula, fearing more attacks. The area has become the epicenter of an ISIS insurgency, including a string of Christian killings. More than 100 families have already evacuated the area. Local parishes are trying to help them relocate by providing necessary supplies. And joining me now is Christina Olney. She's the Director of Government Relations for In Defense of Christians. Welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me, Lauren.
What are your sources telling you about what's happening in Egypt?
Well, so first of all, what we're seeing is that ISIS continues to make clear its intent and to carry out its effort to eliminate Christianity. So in this video that was released about 2 weeks ago, ISIS has made clear specifically its intent to eliminate Christianity in Egypt.
And actually, didn't they say on that video that Egypt, we're coming after you,
exactly.
or something very specific to
exactly.
Egypt?
And so the star of that video is the alleged perpetrator of the December terrorist bombing that took place in Egypt, in Egypt's largest and most important Coptic church. And since the release of that video, we have seen about 29 Coptic Christians who have been killed, including one who was beheaded, just like the 21 Coptic Christians who were beheaded on the shores of Libya in 2015, one who was set on fire, and hundreds who are fleeing for their lives.
Is this because they're Christian? I just want to make perfectly clear.
It is absolutely because they are Christian. They have specifically made clear that they want to eliminate Christianity from Egypt. And so we've heard, Lauren, that about 500 Christians have fled to the north of Egypt so far to try and save their lives.
And to try to get away from ISIS, absolutely. What kind of resources and support are available to these, well, to both, to the Christians who are fleeing to the north and the ones who are staying?
Right. So what we're seeing is a continued pattern of systematic violence that's being waged against Christians in Egypt and all over the Middle East. We know that Christianity, for the second year in a row, is the most persecuted religion in the world.
Right. So what are the resources?
Right. And so what we need to be doing is to specifically assist these communities. In Egypt, the U.S. needs to call on the government of Egypt to secure the Sinai, where these militants have staked out a haven, and to defeat those militants and to ensure that Christians are safe. The U.S. has been giving Egypt billions of dollars in aid for decades. From 2011 to 2015 alone, the U.S. has given Egypt about $6 billion in aid.
Is that leverage? Is what you're saying?
Right. So we should be ensuring that Christians are safe there. And not only there, but in all the places where Christians are the victims of genocide, we should ensure that our foreign and military assistance is going to assist vulnerable communities.
Very good. Thank you so much, Christina Olney, Director of Government Relations for In Defense of Christians, an organization that's been around for about 2 years. Thank you so much. Texas Senator Ted Cruz addressed conservatives last week at the CPAC conference. His faith has always been central to his life, and I asked the former presidential candidate how he relies on it while working in the Senate.
And there's no doubt that your faith grounds you. It gives you a strength and an eye to a time frame that is not a week or a month or even a year, but an eye to a time frame that is the eternal. And it puts things in perspective, that if people are attacking you, if they're not throwing rocks at you, you're not doing anything. And I will get worried the day in politics that people stop attacking me, because it will mean I'm no longer making a difference. I'm no longer taking on the entrenched status quo.
Senator Cruz also tells me Texas will continue to be a leader in promoting a pro-life culture. Up next, defending deplorable Americans.
Our country, whether you like it or not, was founded on Judeo-Christian values and concepts.
Best-selling author Todd Starnes tells me why he's proud to be a gun and Bible-toting Christian conservative. Best-selling author Todd Starnes said Judeo-Christian values are part of America's very essence. The Fox News radio host sat down with me for a one-on-one interview last week. Joining me now is Todd Starnes. He's the author of The Deplorables Guide. It just came out in February. Thank you for joining us.
It's great to be here. Thank you.
Well, deplorables, we know where that came from. Hillary Clinton calling all of Donald Trump's supporters deplorables. Why did you write this book?
Well, I believed somebody needed to stand up for all the deplorable Americans out there. You know, just like President Obama talked about people who cling to their guns and cling to their religion, and he called them bitter. Hillary Clinton went so far as to say people who cherish traditional American values are somehow irredeemable deplorables. And so I wrote a book that said, you know what, I'm proud to call myself a gun-toting, Bible-clinging, deplorable American.
And it also goes to people of faith, I believe. You say in here in Chapter 14, Profiles in Courage, that you've had the honor of interviewing many Christians on Fox News Radio and Fox News Channel, and they chose to fight the good fight in an era where some pastors were actually calling for Christians to stand down and retreat from this culture war. Why are they doing that? Why is this important?
Look, that's a great question. I covered for many years the march on Washington for the pro-life movement.
Yes, me too.
And I'm a Southern Baptist. But what impressed me about that march, 98% of the people marching are Catholics. And I wondered, where are all of my fellow evangelicals? Where are all the Protestants out there? And unfortunately, many Christians these days have chosen not to engage the political process. They've chosen not to fight the culture war. And I understand why. You know, there's a price to pay when you get out there and put yourself out on the front lines. But my book is a call to action for every person of faith in America, Catholic or Calvinist, Presbyterian or Pentecostal. We have to stand together, and when people of faith, when Christians stand together, we can facilitate change in America.
What I love about this book is that you quote the Bible, right? But you quote the Bible, Matthew 25:14-30, saying that Jesus' parables involved business, like venture capitalists. And I think you make a very interesting point that businesses are under attack.
They are. And, you know, capitalism is under attack. And ultimately, you know, our country, whether you like it or not, was founded on Judeo-Christian values and concepts. Those values flavor every single one of our founding documents. And as a result of that, we live in a country where we are free to be free. You're free to worship, you're free not to worship, you're free to practice your religion. If you don't have a religion, that's okay too. But what happens when you start chipping away at religious liberty? I believe that if you start chipping away and endangering our first freedom, every single one of our other freedoms is in jeopardy.
All right. This is a fascinating book, The Deplorables Guide to Making America Great Again, and each chapter is complete with marching orders, so it tells you what you need to do.
Well, it does, and we wanted to give some very practical advice for folks, how they can make America great again by starting in their own homes and communities. And again, this is about getting the local church involved as well. I've had the honor of speaking at many Catholic churches around the country talking about these issues involving religious liberty. And I'm encouraged because I think people really do want to stand up and they want to engage the culture. They just don't know how. They don't want to go out there and march and scream and holler at folks, but they do want to stand for what they believe is right. And I really hope in this book we've illustrated how people can do that.
Thank you so much, Todd Starnes.
Thanks, Lauren.
Pope Francis has advice for a happy marriage. More preparation. The Holy Father says a few classes before the big day are not enough, and he says couples need help for the first few years. I would argue the first few decades after they say I do. For more on the Pope's comments, visit CatholicNewsAgency.com. And for all of us here at EWTN News Nightly, to all of you around the world, I'm Lauren Ashburn. Don't forget to follow us on Facebook and Twitter and continue the conversations. We also have some behind-the-scenes looks for you. We leave you with yesterday's Mardi Gras parade in New Orleans ahead of Ash Wednesday that is already this week. Good night and God bless.